Once upon a time in a bustling city, there lived a man named Thomas, a brilliant military engineer whose days were spent designing cutting-edge defense systems for the armed forces. He was a quiet, methodical soul, proud of his work that he believed protected innocence and upheld national security. His wife, Joanne, was a fiery feminist and the HR director at a progressive tech firm, where she championed women's rights, diversity initiatives, and dismantling systemic inequalities. Their marriage, once sparked by a chance meeting at a charity gala, had grown strained over the years. Joanne viewed the military as the epitome of patriarchal oppression, a machine that perpetuated violence, toxic masculinity, and global injustice. She never missed an opportunity to berate Thomas about his career, calling it blood money during dinner arguments or mocking his uniform in front of friends. "How can you sleep at night, building tools for warmongers?" she'd sneer, her eyes flashing with righteous anger. Thomas, ever the stoic, would bite his tongue, hoping her passion would someday mellow. But Joanne's frustrations simmered deeper than ideology. Feeling unfulfilled in her marriage, she sought solace in online feminist forums and local activist groups. It was at one such gathering, a panel on intersectional feminism, that she met Kumar, a charismatic male feminist and spoken-word poet who advocated for dismantling gender norms. Kumar's smooth words and empathetic gaze drew her in. He listened to her rants about Thomas without judgment, whispering affirmations like, "You're a queen trapped in a king's shadow." Their conversations turned flirtatious, then intimate. Soon after, at a book launch for a feminist manifesto, she encountered Jaquavius, a handsome community organizer and ally in the fight against systemic racism and sexism. Jaquavius was bold and passionate, organizing protests and workshops, and he saw Joanne as a powerful force. "We could change the world together," he'd say, his touch lingering too long. What started as emotional connection spiraled into physical affairs. Joanne found herself entangled in a strange love triangle, sneaking away for stolen afternoons with Kumar in cozy cafes turned hotel rooms, and passionate evenings with Jaquavius at underground art events. The thrill of secrecy excited her. She rationalized it as reclaiming her autonomy from a husband she saw as complicit in oppression. Kumar and Jaquavius, unaware of each other at first, both vied for her affections, showering her with gifts and declarations of love. Joanne reveled in the attention, feeling empowered for the first time in years. Thomas, however, was no fool. His engineering mind noticed the inconsistencies: late nights at work events, hushed phone calls, and a sudden interest in poetry slams. Suspicion gnawed at him until he hired a discreet private investigator. The evidence poured in: photos, texts, hotel receipts, confirming his worst fears. Rage boiled beneath his calm exterior, but Thomas didn't confront her impulsively. Instead, he drew up an epic plan, as meticulous as any blueprint he'd ever designed. First, he secured his assets. Consulting a lawyer in secret, he transferred funds to offshore accounts, placed liens on joint properties, and gathered proof of her infidelity to leverage in divorce proceedings. He aimed to leave her with nothing but regret. The exposure was surgical. Thomas anonymously leaked compromising emails and photos to Joanne's workplace, framing them as whistleblower tips about ethical violations in our. Her affairs with Kumar and Jaquavius, both involved in activist circles tied to her company's partnerships, painted her as a hypocrite abusing her power. The scandal erupted online, with feminist influencers decrying her as a fraud who exploited male allies for personal gain. Her reputation shattered. She was fired amid public outcry, her once admiring colleagues turning their backs. But Thomas wasn't done. He orchestrated the turning point by planting seeds of doubt. Using fake social media accounts, he fed Kumar evidence that Jaquavius was badmouthing him as a performative ally, only in it for the clout, and vice versa. Whispers turned to accusations. Kumar confronted Joanne about her other lover, accusing her of using him to spite her husband. Jaquavius, fueled by jealousy, exposed private messages where Joanne mocked Kumar's poetry as pretentious drivel. The trio imploded in a storm of betrayal. Public arguments spilled onto social media, with Kumar doxing Jaquavius in a fit of rage, and Joanne lashing out at both, calling them entitled posers hiding behind feminism. The backlash was relentless: death threats, lost jobs, shattered friendships. In the chaos, despair consumed them. Joanne, isolated and bankrupt after the divorce, spiraled into depression, her feminist ideals twisted into self-loathing. One stormy night, overwhelmed by the ruins of her life, she drove her car off a cliffside road, her end ruled a tragic accident. Kumar and Jaquavius, their rivalry escalating, met in a heated confrontation at a bar that turned violent. In the ensuing brawl, fueled by alcohol and bitterness, Jaquavius pulled a knife in self-defense, but it ended fatally for both, a mutual destruction witnessed by horrified patrons. Thomas, cleared of any involvement by airtight alibis and the appearance of organic fallout, walked away unscathed. He retired early with his assets intact, relocating to a serene coastal town. There, he pursued passions long neglected, writing memoirs on engineering ethics, volunteering for veteran support groups, and even finding love again with a kind-hearted artist who appreciated his quiet strength. His life bloomed into fulfillment, travels, hobbies, and peace, proving that sometimes, the most precise revenge is the one that rebuilds from the ashes. And so, Thomas lived happily ever after, his story a whispered cautionary tale in the shadows of the city he left behind.